The 16th of February, 1900, Volume 3. Mortification must be the breath of the soul. It continues almost always in the same way. This morning, after renewing in me the pains of the crucifixion, he told me, mortification must be the breath of the soul, just as breathing is necessary to the body, and depending on the air it breathes, whether good or bad, it becomes infected or purified. And also, from the breathing, it can be known whether the interior of man is healthy or ill, and whether all the vital parts are in harmony. The same for the soul. If she breathes the air of mortification, everything in her will be purified. All of her senses will sound with the same concordant sound. Her interior will emit a balsamic, salutary, fortifying breath. If then she does not breathe the air of mortification, everything will be discordant in the soul. She will emit a stinking, disgusting breath. While she is about to tame one passion, another will unbridle. In sum, her life will be nothing but a child's game. I seem to see mortification as a musical instrument. If the strings are all good and strong, it produces a harmonious and pleasant sound. But if the strings are not good, one must now fix one, now tune another. Therefore all the time is spent fixing but never playing. At the most it will produce a discordant and unpleasant sound, so nothing good will ever be accomplished. End of the reading. The 16th of February, 1908, Volume 8. How the cross is the surest sign to know whether we love the Lord. As I was in my usual state, I was thinking about why it is the cross alone that makes us know whether we really love the Lord, while there are many other things like the virtues, prayer, the sacraments, which could make us know whether we love the Lord. But while I was thinking of this, blessed Jesus came and told me, my daughter, it is really so. The cross alone is that which makes one know whether he really loves the Lord, but a cross carried with patience and resignation, because where there is patience and resignation in crosses, there is divine life. Since nature is so reluctant to suffering, if there is patience, it cannot be something natural but divine, and the soul no longer loves the Lord with her love alone, but united with the love of the divine life. So what doubt can she have whether she loves or not, if she arrives at loving him with his own love? On the other hand, in the other things, and even in the very sacraments, there also may be someone who loves, who contains this divine life within himself, but these things cannot give the certainty of the cross. It may be there or it may not, because of lack of dispositions. One can very well go to confession, but if he lacks the dispositions, it certainly cannot be said that he loves and that he has received this divine life within himself. Another may receive communion. Indeed, he receives the divine life, but he can only say that this divine life remains within him if he had the true disposition. In fact, it can be seen how some receive communion or go to confession, but as occasions arise, the patience of divine life cannot be seen in them. And if patience is missing, love is missing, because love is recognized only through sacrifice. And so, here are the doubts. While the cross, patience, resignation are fruits produced only by grace and by love. End of the reading. The 16th of February, 1921, Volume 12. In order to enter the divine will, the creature must do nothing but remove the little stone of her will. While I was thinking about the holy divine volition, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, there are neither paths, nor doors, nor keys to enter my will, because my will is everywhere. It flows under one's feet, on the right, on the left, above one's head, everywhere. The creature must do nothing but remove the little stone of her own will, which, though being in my will, does not take part in, nor does it enjoy its effects, becoming like a stranger in my volition. In fact, it is as if the little stone of her will prevented the water from flowing from the shore so as to run somewhere else. The stones are blocking it. But if the soul removes the little stone of her will, at that very instant she flows into me and I into her. She finds all my goods at her disposal: strength, light, help, whatever she wants. This is why there are no paths, no doors, and no keys. It is enough for her to want it, and all is done. My will takes charge of everything, providing her with all that she lacks, and making her wander within the interminable boundaries of my will. It is completely the opposite for the other virtues. How many efforts are needed? How many fights? How many long paths? And while it seems that the virtue is smiling at her, one passion, a little violent, one temptation, one unexpected encounter, push you back to the beginning of the path. End of the reading. The 16th of February, 1923, Volume 15. The cross which the divine will gave to our Lord. In order to operate the perfect and complete redemption, Jesus had to do it in the sphere of eternity. I was doing my usual adoration to the crucified one and abandoning all of myself in his lovable will. But as I was doing this, I felt my beloved Jesus move in my interior, saying, "My daughter, hurry, hurry, quickly, hasten, do your course in my volition. Keep going through all that my humanity did in the supreme will, so that you may unite your acts to mine and to those of my Mama. It has been decreed that if a creature does not enter into the eternal volition to render all our acts triple, this supreme volition will not descend upon earth to carry out its life in the human generations. It wants the cortege of the triple acts in order to make itself known. Therefore hasten." Jesus kept silent, and I felt myself as though flung into the holy eternal volition. But I am unable to say what I was doing. I can only say that I found all the acts of Jesus, and I placed my own. Then he continued to speak, saying, "My daughter, how many things will my will make known of what my humanity operated in this divine will? In order to operate the perfect and complete redemption, my humanity had to do it in the sphere of eternity. Here is the necessity of an eternal will. If my human will did not have an eternal will with itself, all my acts would be limited and finite acts, but with it they are endless and infinite. Therefore my pains, my cross, had to be endless and infinite, and the divine will make my humanity find all these pains and crosses, so much so that it laid me over the whole human family, from the first to the last man, and I absorbed all kinds of pains within myself, and each creature formed my cross. So my cross was as long as all centuries are and will be, and as wide as the human generations. It was not just the little cross of Calvary on which the Jews crucified me. That one was nothing but a simile of the long cross in which the supreme will kept me crucified. So each creature formed the length and the width of the cross, and as they formed it, they remain grafted in that same cross, and the divine will laying me over it and crucifying me made the cross not only my own, but of all those who formed that cross. This is why I needed the sphere of eternity to keep this cross. The terrestrial space would not be enough to contain it. Oh, how much will creatures love me when they come to know what my humanity did in the divine will and what it made me suffer for love of them. My cross was not of wood, no, it was made of souls. It was them that I felt palpitating in the cross on which the divine will laid me, and it let none of them escape me. It gave a place to each one, and in order to give a place to all, it stretched me in such a harrowing way, and with pains so atrocious that I could call the pains of my passion little and reliefs. Therefore hasten, so that my will may make known all that this eternal volition operated in my humanity. This knowledge will win so much love that creatures will bend to let it reign in their midst. Now, as he was saying this, he showed so much tenderness and so much love that, amazed, I said to him, "My love, why do you show so much love when you speak about your will, such that it seems as if you wanted to release another you from within yourself because of the great love that you feel? While if you speak about something else, this excess of love does not show in you." And he, "My daughter, do you want to know? When I speak about my will to make it known to the creature, I want to infuse in her my own divinity and therefore another me. So my whole love enters the field in order to do this, and I love her as I love myself. This is why you see that while I speak about my will, my love seems to overflow out of its boundaries in order to form the dwelling of my will in the heart of the creature. On the other hand, when I speak about something else, it is my virtues that I infuse, and according to the virtues that I keep manifesting to her, I love her now as Creator, now as Father, now as Redeemer, now as Teacher, now as Doctor, and so on. Therefore, there is not that exuberance of love as when I want to form another me. End of the reading. The 16th of February, 1924, Volume 16. Immense sorrow and infinite joys, which are incessantly renewed in the heart of Jesus. One who with love shares in his sorrows also shares in his joys. I was thinking of the sorrows of the most holy heart of Jesus. Oh, how my pains disappeared when compared to his. And my always adorable Jesus told me, "My daughter, the sorrows of my heart are indescribable and incomprehensible to human creature. You must know that every beat of my heart was a distinct pain. Every heartbeat brought me a new pain, one different from the other. Human life is a continuous palpitating. If the heartbeat ceases, life ceases. And so now imagine what torrents of pain each beat of my heart brought me up to the last moment of my dying, from my conception to my last heartbeat. It did not spare me from bringing me new pains and bitter sorrows. However, you must also know that my divinity, which was inseparable from me, watching over my heart, while letting a new sorrow enter at each heartbeat, in the same way, at each heartbeat, it let enter new joys, new contentments, new harmonies, and celestial secrets. If I was rich in sorrow, and my heart enclosed immense seas of pain, I was also rich of happiness, of infinite joys, and of unreachable sweetness. I would have died at the first heartbeat of pain if the divinity loving this heart with infinite love had not let each heartbeat resound into within my heart sorrow and joy, bitterness and sweetness, pains and contentments, death and life, humiliation and glory, human abandonments and divine comforts. Oh, if you could see my heart, you would see all possible imaginable sorrows centralized in me, from which creatures rise again to new life, and all contentments and divine riches flowing in my heart like many seas, as I diffuse them for the good of the whole human family. But who shares more in these immense treasures of my heart? For those who suffer more, for each pain, for each sorrow, there a special joy in my heart which follows that pain or sorrow suffered by the creature. Pain renders her more dignified, more lovable, more dear, more worthy of sympathy. And since my heart drew upon itself all divine sympathies by virtue of the pain suffered, in seeing pain in the creature, which is a special characteristic of my heart, watching over this pain, with all my love, I pour upon her the joy and contentments which my heart contains, but to my highest sorrow. While my heart would want to let my joys follow the pain I send to the creatures, not finding in them the love of suffering and the true resignation which my heart possessed, my joys still follow pain, but in seeing that the pain has not been received with love and honour, and with high submission, my joys do not find the way to enter that sorrowful heart, and grieving, they return to my heart. Therefore, when I find a soul who is resigned, who loves suffering, I feel her as though regenerated within my heart, and oh, how sorrows and joys, bitterness and sweetness alternate. I hold nothing back of all the goods which I can pour upon her. End of the reading. The 16th of February, 1927, Volume 20. How the fiat places everything in communication wherever it reigns. Example of spouses. The working of the divine will is the fullness of the acts and the triumph of the divine act in the human. I was going around in the whole creation to bring all created things together with me before the Supreme Majesty as homage, praises, adorations, because they are works of his creative hands, worthy only of the one who has created them, for they are animated by his divine will. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, created things do not move, they stay at their place, they do not come with me. So it is useless to say that I bring them together with me, because they do not come. But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and at the same time he showed me my little soul, which had many rays centered within itself, that maintained the communication with each created thing in such a way that they were in communication with me and I with them. But the main point of origin from which these rays started was God, who kept the communications with everyone and with everything. And my lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, wherever my will reigns with its light, which no one can resist because it is immense and penetrating, it places everything in communication. Each ray starts from the divine center, in which my will has its primary dwelling. The rays are nothing but the acts which the divine fiat releases from itself, which, investing each created thing, form their life, and as many secondary dwellings in each one of them. Now it is natural that for the soul in whom my will reigns, as she forms her acts in my volition, all created things receive the communication of that act by virtue of the light that unites them, and along the flight of that same light, they unite together in order to perform the act that the soul does, in whom my will reigns. In fact, one is the will which they possess, one is the strength, therefore one is the act they want to do. It is my will itself that moves everything and makes the act of one act of all. Therefore be sure that even though created things remain at their place, they all follow you. My will itself puts them on their way to you, so that you may not be alone, but accompanied by all of them. It happens as in a wedding. The bride and the groom walk in front by themselves, but behind them follows the great number of those who are invited. You are the bride with whom my will wanted to form its royal wedding. It wanted to destroy the division, the obstacles which existed between you and it, in order to form the most happy couple which has ever existed. So these are days of celebration for you and for it. Your acts animated by the divine fiat are continuous invitations that you make to all the things that came out of our creative hands. Therefore, your invitation is extremely vast, and there is no one who can do without accepting, because it is a divine will that calls all of its works to its banquet, excluding not even my celestial Mama, and all feel honoured and triumphant in attending the wedding and in participating in the nuptial banquet of this supreme will of mine. This is why they anxiously await your acts, your invitations, your calls to come and sit at the banquet and celebrate the two spouses. Therefore, you go ahead together with my will before the Supreme Majesty. My works follow you behind. And this happens with justice, because in creating all things, it is to the creature that we give supremacy over all our works. That is, to the creature in whom our divine fiat was to reign fully, not to the creature degraded by her will. This one is the last among all and has no right nor communication, while the creature in whom my will reigns has the right to be the first one to call everyone and to be followed by everyone. Therefore, operating in my will is the greatest miracle, and the fullness of all acts united together, and the triumph of the divine act in the human act, because my will was as though sterile in the midst of creatures, and it is now made happy by its first daughter, in whom it sees its many newborns who will come to light. So it will no longer live as a sterile mother in the midst of the people, but as a mother fecund with many children. It used to be a widow, because in creating the first man it espoused the human nature, dowering it with the immense riches of its will, as the seal of the marriage it formed with man. As he withdrew from it, it remained a widow for many centuries, but now it has removed the mourning of its widowhood, and marrying again, it has taken its garments of bride and has released its dowries into the field once again. And the seal of the dowries are the knowledges about it, through which it offers the gift of the riches it possesses. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive in preserving your garments of bride and in enjoying the dominions that my will has given you as dowry. End of the reading. The 16th of February 1932, Volume 30. The acts done without the divine will are empty of the infinite. How one needs to do everything and wait for the events in order to let the kingdom of the divine will come. How the acts done in it depart for heaven as property of the celestial fatherland. I was continuing my acts in the divine will in order to find all its acts and melt them together so as to be able to say, what it does, I do. Oh, what happiness is felt in thinking that I am doing what the divine will does. And my lovable Jesus, visiting his little daughter, told me, good daughter, if you knew what void forms in the act of the creature when she is not filled with all of my will, in fact, in that act, there is lacking the fullness of sanctity, there is lacking the infinite. And since there is lacking the infinite, one sees an abyss of void that only the infinite could fill, because the creature, with all her acts, has been made for the infinite. And when my will flows in her acts, it places the infinite there, and one sees her act full of light that holds her in its womb of light, and with the infinite inside that renders her act complete. On the other hand, when my will does not enter as life, beginning, means, and end, in the act of the creature, the act is empty, and no one can fill the abyss of that void. And if there is sin, one sees in that act such an abyss of darkness and miseries as to be horrifying. Now, my daughter, how many of these acts there are in the length of the centuries that are empty of the infinite? The infinite is rejected by the human act. My divine will has a right over each act of the creature, and in order to come to reign, it wants one who lives in it, who would go searching out all these empty acts in order to pray it, urge it that in each act it would place the infinite, so that it could recognize in each act its act in order to let its dominion be complete. And although these acts were past acts, there is always, for the one who lives in my will, the ability to do and to repair, because there is the power in it of being able to justify and redo everything, provided it find one creature who lend herself. Even more because they are acts of the creature without my will, another united with my will can justify and order everything. This is why, my daughter, I have told you other times, and I repeat it, let us do everything that is needed in order to make the divine will known and make it reign. Nothing must be lacking on our part. Prayers, sacrifices of one's own life, to take as in hand all the acts of creatures in order to call her to her place in ours, such that it is my and your I love you, my and your prayer that cries, we want the divine will. Thus the whole of creation and all acts will be as all covered by divine will, and it will feel itself called from all points by each act of the creature, by each created thing, because you and I have already made the call, wanting to also place in each created thing and in every act even the sacrifice of life, so that it might come to reign. This will be powerful before the throne of God, magnetic force, irresistible magnet, that all the acts cry out that they want the divine will reigning in the midst of creatures. But who is the one who cries out? I am the little daughter of my volition. Therefore, as enraptured, it will descend to reign. This is why you go around and around again in the creation, in my acts themselves, in those of the celestial Mama, in order to pledge our divine acts themselves for a kingdom so holy, and in those of the creatures, in order to copy them and place in them what might be lacking. But all must have one single voice, either directly or indirectly, by means of the one who wants to make the sacrifice of acting as supplier and repairer, in order to obtain that it comes to reign in the midst of the generations. Therefore, what I want you to do, and what I do together with you, are necessary acts, preparations, formations, substances, and capitals that are needed. When we have done everything on my part and on your part, in a way that nothing must be lacking, so can it be said, we have done everything, nothing else remains to be done. Just as in the redemption I said, I have done everything in order to redeem man. My love does not know what else to invent in order to place him in safety. And I departed for heaven, awaiting that he would take the good that the sacrifice of my life had formed and given him. So when nothing else remains to be done for the kingdom of my will on earth, you also will be able to come into heaven, awaiting from the celestial fatherland that creatures take the substances, the capital, the kingdom that will be already formed of the supreme being. Therefore I always tell you, be attentive, do not omit anything. When nothing else can be done, we did our part. The rest, the circumstances, the events, the things, diversity of people, will do the rest. And since it is already formed, it will go forth by itself, will continue on in its reigning. One thing is needed, more sacrifice to form it, that the going forth is done soon. But in order to form it, there is needed one who places her own life and the sacrifice of a will, sacrifice with continuous acts, in mind. After this he was silent, and then he added, my daughter, you must know that every act of the creature holds its place around God, just like every star has its place under the vault of the sky. So each one of her acts has their place. But which are those that depart by the royal way as property of the celestial fatherland, and take the most honoured places, and give divine glory to their Creator? The acts done in my will. When one of these acts departs from earth, the heavens lower themselves, all the blessed go to meet it, and they accompany that act to the place of honour around the supreme throne. They all feel glorified in that act because the eternal will has triumphed in the act of the creature and has placed its divine act there. On the other hand, acts not done in my will, and perhaps even good ones, do not depart by the royal way. They depart by tortuous ways and make a long stop by going to purgatory and waiting there with the creature in order to purify themselves entirely by way of fire. And when they are done being purified, then they depart for heaven to take their place, but not in the places of the first order, but in the secondary places. Do you see the great difference? For the first acts, no sooner are they formed than they do not remain together with the creature, because being a thing of heaven, they cannot remain on the earth, and therefore they immediately take flight into their fatherland. Not only this, but all the angels and saints claim in heaven as their thing what has been done by the divine will, because all that has been done by it, as much on earth as in heaven, are all properties of the celestial fatherland. Therefore, every little act of it is claimed by the whole of heaven, because they are all fonts of joys and eternal beatitudes that pertain to them. It is all the opposite for one who does not work in my will. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.